Welcome to the Chronic Warriors podcast with Cassandra A. Campbell, a platform to share, hear, and cheer chronic illness warriors.
Just know that when you made your commitment to your partner, you took their whole selves.
To be able to have a bad day, to be able to say, do you know what, I can't cope no more.
I am a chronic warrior because every day I wake up and I'm so glad to still be here.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me.
For my first official episode, I'm kicking off with Ehlers Danlos Support UK's Managing Director, Kay Julia. Welcome, Kay, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Cassandra. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just going to tell our listeners just a little bit about how we met. So I first met Kay at a meeting in London with my co-author and vlogger, Marcia Brock, and our EDS relationship just continued from there. We've been featured in the Charities magazine, delivered confidence building workshops with their teams, and we donate to the charity Sales of Our Book, Broken. This charity just does so much for the EDS community, and I personally think they're great. But I'm going to let Kay tell you all about what they do. So over to you, Kay.
Thank you, Cassandra. So the Ehlers Danlos Support UK it's a UK charity. It's very focused on the UK. And we provide information and support to anybody with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and also hypermobility spectrum disorders, which is a closely related condition. And it doesn't matter if you're diagnosed or not. Lots of people come to us because they think they might have one of the conditions and they just want advice on how to, where to go really to talk about that a bit more. So the charity was founded over 30 years ago, and as with lots of charities like ours, it was a family really that started it off because they realised that there was no support, no information out there when they were going through their sort of early years of diagnosis within the family and looking for support. And then, other people got involved, and it was run by volunteers for years and years. And it was only in the 2010s that the charity actually started to employ staff. So, and we've come a long way since then. There are more and more people being diagnosed, which means that there are more and more people looking for our help. But our main focus is information and support. We fund research, and we hope to be doing more of that in the future. And raising awareness and providing education about the conditions is also key for us.
Right. I mean, wow, I didn't know that the charity had been around for 30 years.
Yeah.
That's big. I mean, it's been around for as long as I've had symptoms. Although I didn't know what they were. But
Exactly.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. I'm always sharing with as many people as I can who have EDS, who are even not in the UK, about what you guys do, because I just think it's important to have that resource and support as well. So
yes, I think you're right, and that's the feedback that we get. Lots of people who come to us are just, it's really, they get a big sense of relief just because they can talk to people who understand what they're going through, and they don't have to explain. They spend a lot of time explaining to people what their symptoms are and what they feel like, and usually there's an overwhelming sense of relief when they find us, that they can just they've got somebody who can just go, oh yeah, we understand that, yes, we've heard that before, yes, there are other people like you, and that is really reassuring to a lot of people.
So for you yourself, what made you get involved with the charity?
So I was trained as a scientist, so spent the early part of my career in medical research. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for quite a long time, and I felt that I wanted to work more closely with patients. So the work I've done throughout my career has always been indirectly helping people affected by a whole range of conditions, but I decided that I wanted to work more directly with patients. So I left the pharmaceutical industry in, I think it was 2012, something like that, and moved into the health charity sector. And I was working actually for a breast cancer charity, and a bit of a long story short, but I, you know, for various reasons wanted to reduce my hours. So started looking around for other jobs within the health charity sector, and I came across this job that was advertised by the Ehlers Danlos Support UK, and it was unusual because it was quite a senior job, but it was part-time, and sadly even today they are very few and far between. So I applied for the job. I had not heard of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome at the time, and obviously did some research for my interview. And really from that point, you know, clearly I got the job, but from that point, the more I found out about the conditions, partly as a scientist, they intrigued me because they are so complex and so little is still known about them today. Yeah. And also I was really shocked the more I found out about people's experiences, people who have the condition or think they have the conditions. I was just really shocked by how poorly a lot of people had been treated. So coming from, you know, working with people who have cancer or diabetes, which I've done before, you know, the experiences for people with Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and lots of other rare conditions is just so different. So yeah, I was grabbed really from the first moment of having my first interview. You know, I was hooked on the condition and wanted to know more about it and wanted to help.
And how have you been finding it? How long have you been there now?
I've been in my post for over 5 years now. I absolutely love it. It's hugely challenging, hugely varied. So every single day is different. I'm really lucky in that I've got a great team of staff, and we have an amazing team of volunteers as well. So we have over 60 volunteers across the UK, and they're absolutely integral to everything we do. We couldn't operate without them.
I've met a few of them, whether online or in person, and yeah, I think they're great as well. They do.
Yeah, so we're very lucky. You know, it's very much a team effort. You know, everything depends on you know, so many people within the team. And I just, you know, I still really enjoy hearing people's stories. You know, meeting new people, speaking to new people. Unfortunately, you know, the challenges are still there. The challenges for diagnosing EDS, treating EDS, we're a long way off fixing those. But I do feel that we're making small steps towards making things better. So that's really rewarding on a personal level.
I can imagine. So what would you say are the biggest challenges that the charity face?
So I think, as with most charities, we're constantly looking for funding. So, you know, there's always that constant at the back of your mind. You know what you want to do. You know, our board and the team I work with, there's always lots of ideas in the pipeline. We know very clearly what needs to be done to help people with Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, and that's all around bringing the time to diagnosis forward. There's lots that goes into that, you know, improving treatments, making sure the support is the best it can be and that it's accessible to as many people as possible when they need it. So we know what there is to do, but there's the constant challenge of, you know, unfortunately you cannot do very much without money. Yeah. You know, if you need people, you know, they need paying, etc. You can do so much with volunteers, but not everything. So unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges is making sure we've got funding to do everything that we want to do. The other big challenge I would say is that the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes are a group of conditions, and they include very, very rare types and also types that we now think are probably not rare at all. So we're trying to represent a very diverse group of conditions, and that can sometimes be challenging. You know, if you're trying to explain something to someone and it's already quite complex, you know, then trying to explain the whole spectrum of the conditions, it is also a really big challenge.
Yeah, because I mean, I've for the past few years read that there are 13 types, and then just recently I'm hearing that there are 14 types, and I just cannot keep up, and I can't keep up with all the different terminologies, and it's just changing all the time.
It is, and you know, to me that's inevitable, because the more that is found out about, you know, the genetics of the conditions, and you know, the real sort of deep, let's call it the deep science of the conditions, it's inevitable really that as more gets known, that the terminology might change, and I think that's just, you know, unfortunately that's not going to change.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's difficult to keep up, and it's, you know, and I really sympathise with the medical community that are faced with trying to recognise and diagnose the conditions, because while things are changing at such a fast pace, you know, it is quite hard to keep up with the latest information. And, you know, especially GPs, they think of it as a rare condition. Most types are rare, and they've got to, you know, they can't be expected to know about it alongside everything else that they know about. So, you know, we are very sympathetic to that.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges I would say that people with EDS have, is being diagnosed and having supportive GPs, but also having GPs that have either just heard of it or have any form of understanding about it.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that you guys worked on an EDS GP toolkit.
We did, yeah. We were really pleased in sort of 2017, 2018 to partner with the Royal College of GPs to put together a toolkit of information. So this is really it's online, so it's a website of information about the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes and some of the conditions that can go along with them. And it really is aimed at, you know, a busy GP who we sort of expect to know very little about the conditions. They may have heard of them in medical school, but not really expect to be faced with them. So we actually worked with a great GP, Emma Reinhold, and some other members of the medical community, and put together this toolkit, which we're very proud of.
Well, it's brilliant, because
it's definitely not everything that's needed. There's still a lot more to do, but we're still very proud of it as a medical resource, and we hope it's going to be around for quite some time.
I mean, well, as a non-medical person and as somebody who has EDS, I found it really valuable, even just for people to share with their family, you know, their loved ones, for them to get a little bit of an understanding about EDS and possibly what to look out for, etc. So I found it useful in that way as well as for GPs.
Great, thank you for that. It's good to know.
I think it's really, really good. There was some great information in there, and I have mentioned it to a couple of GPs that I've seen. They've never heard of it. I've mentioned it, suggested that they read it. Whether they have or not is a whole another story.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, at least it's there and it's accessible. And even when I go down to the osteopath, you know, when I've come across osteopaths that have not heard of it, I've mentioned it to them as well. And I know a couple of them have gone on to actually read it and have come back to me and said, oh, that was really useful. So, you know, I think it's a fantastic piece of work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for doing that for the community. So other than your toolkit, what would you say are other great achievements charity has done?
Oh, that's a good question. So we are very proud of our UK-wide network of support, and that is actually thanks to funding from the National Lottery Community Fund. So we are over 6 years into being funded by the National Lottery. Our support groups wouldn't exist without them. And as I said before about the volunteers, so now we are at a stage where we've got support groups running in over 50 regions, really, 50 areas throughout England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And I think one of our biggest achievements now is that we were able to not only continue support through the pandemic, but actually expand it. So we had already started piloting virtual support groups before the pandemic hit. So we were doing that in October 2019. And it was supposed to be a small experiment with a handful of volunteers just testing out this thing called Zoom. Yeah. And then obviously the whole world, or certainly the whole UK, seemed to be plunged into using Zoom for everything. So yeah, very quickly, right in March 2020, we quickly switched most of our support groups to virtual. And again, all credit to our volunteers, because most of them, probably were not 100% keen to do that, didn't really know what they were letting themselves in for. So we quickly trained everybody, put some extra support in place for the volunteers to help them adjust to the Zoom, using Zoom. And, I think it's been a great success. Lots more people have been able to access support than would have been able to if they'd had to go to a physical support group. So I'm really, really pleased that we managed to carry on our support. We also added in a lot of social clubs like book club, puzzle club, gaming club throughout the pandemic, just to give people that additional social contact that they were missing out of through lockdown. So I'm really proud of that. And also the fact that we actually managed to keep all the team. So again, thanks to our really generous donors, people who make donations and fundraise for us, even though a lot of fundraising couldn't happen, we were able to access some emergency funds, which meant that we didn't have to furlough any of the staff. So, I think that's another achievement, certainly just from an organisational point of view, definitely.
Definitely. And I see a lot of people doing fundraising walks and runs and baking and all kinds of things. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, we do. Again, we're very lucky. We have a very loyal set of supporters who do things like that to raise money for the charity. And, it's another group of people that we just wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. So I'll take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to everybody. And the creativity that goes into some of these things always amazes, not just me, but I know the rest of the team. The baking that we ran over the spring, some of the creations that were submitted in the photographs were just incredible. So it also gives us a little bit of light relief, a bit of fun, and a few smiles as well, which is always very welcome.
Yeah, and it's great that some of your fundraisers, some have EDS and some don't. So it seems you've got a mixture there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lots of people are inspired to fundraise because maybe a family member is affected, or a friend or a colleague. So yes, and I think, sometimes people maybe who are badly affected by the condition see people doing, challenge events and runs and marathons, and, maybe feel a bit, I can't do that. But, the people that are doing that, most of them don't have EDS. They are, friends, family members, colleagues of people who do. And that's a really important source of support for us as well.
Absolutely brilliant. So do you want to tell us a bit more about what the charity does? You've spoken about the support groups. I know you have campaigns going on. There was one that I was involved in where you did a post about time to diagnosis and things like that.
Yeah, so what we haven't done a lot of sort of lobbying and campaigning work in the past, just mainly because the team's been small and it's not an area of expertise that we have. But it's something that we really see is essential moving forward. It's a way to really facilitate proper change. The only way things are going to improve is really by highlighting the issues and working with the people who can fix them. So we are going to be doing much more public campaigning and work like that. In order to do that, we've got to really show that there's evidence of the problems. So we're doing some work at the moment called a health needs assessment. We're working with public health colleagues to really show that there aren't enough services for people, certainly with hypermobile EDS and hypermobility spectrum disorders. There needs to be much better services within the NHS for people, and we're doing a research project to demonstrate what the gaps are and how they might be filled. So that's something that's coming up. And actually, a bit of an exclusive for you, next week we're launching a new toolkit for schools, an online website aimed at school staff so that they can help children and young people who might be struggling in school because of their EDS or their hypermobility problems. So that is coming out next week. That's something that parents have been really asking for a long time, and actually schools themselves. So we've worked with a couple of our volunteers actually who have got a background in education, who have led on the content of that. So yeah, something else that is coming out. And we are also trying to get funding together to have a dedicated support program for children and young people. So we know that, young people especially, and you've had some experience of that with us, working with teenagers with EDS.
Yeah.
And we're working on getting some funding together so we can have a proper dedicated program of support for children and young people. And we want to have a mentoring program, as well as support groups, social days, activity days, things like that. So that's one of the next big projects that we're looking to get funding for.
Brilliant. So I've been privy to some exclusives. Lovely.
You
Well, I love, the whole schools program thing and young people thing, because I know it's definitely something that I could have benefited from, even though I wasn't diagnosed when I was a teenager, but I really could have benefited from that kind of support. And even when I went on to college, I never got any support and didn't end up being able to finish my course because of EDS, basically. Yeah. So having that in schools and for young people, I think is so needed. And I think it's great that you're doing that. So I'm gonna, I'm not a teenager anymore, but far off it, but I'll be really interested in just looking at what that's going to be about, really. I think that's brilliant. Brilliant.
Thank you. And for us, it's very much a starting point. We know, again, there's a lot of work to do. We know that parents want more information about how they can work with schools and local education authorities to get what they need for their kids. So, this is very much a starting point. So we decided to start with information for school staff, and then hopefully we'll be able to develop information for parents, as well as dedicated support for children and young people as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hopefully when you've got everything all sorted and figured out, either yourself or somebody else from your team could come on as a guest and tell everybody about it. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thank you. That would be great.
Lovely stuff. So also, if you can share about the magazine and your membership and everything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we produce a magazine twice a year. The magazine is called Fragile Links, and we produce it in print and in digital formats. So, again, something else we're really proud of. A lot of work goes into the magazine, and Cassandra, as you mentioned, you've been a contributor yourself, and your some of your work is going to be in the one that is coming out in June. So that's great. Thank you again for contributing. We're always looking for people to write articles for us. So if any of your listeners have got a story that they feel would be good for the magazine, then please get in touch. We're always looking for new stories and new articles. Our membership is free. So we used to have paid membership, and we removed that in 2018 because we wanted to make sure that anybody who needed help and support could get that. So membership is free. We do charge for the magazine, but that's completely optional. So you can be a member completely free of charge. The magazine, the printed magazine costs £8 a year for 2 copies. The digital is £5 a year. So yeah, we have around 13,000 members now, which is fantastic. So yeah, we're in touch with a lot of people, which means, when we talk about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in the public domain, we are really talking from quite an informed standpoint. We communicate with our members on a regular basis, so we are representing a lot of people. What else can I tell you? We have a helpline as well, a free helpline, which people can contact us by email or telephone at the helpline. So I've got a couple of people, Sarah and Asia, who work on that together. Both have a lot of experience of supporting people with the conditions. And if they don't know the answer to something, then they'll usually be able to find out for you. And we get calls about really everything to do with the conditions and living with them. So everything from what are the symptoms, people tell us their symptoms and ask us to say whether we think it's worth getting them checked out. So we're not medically qualified, we're not allowed to give medical advice, but we can usually say, oh yes, it might be worth speaking to your doctor about that, or no, we don't think it's anything to do with EDS, something like that. People call us about maybe getting access to benefits if they're struggling to work. People call us about challenges at work, challenges at school, challenges at uni. So really all sorts. Some people just want to chat, as I said before, they maybe haven't ever spoken to anybody before who knows about the condition. So some people just phone for emotional support as well, maybe just because they're really struggling with their symptoms and they just want to talk to somebody who understands. So, again, it's another service that we're really proud of. We work really hard to make sure we can still run it. So in the past, when our funding dropped, we had to reduce the hours of the helpline, but we've just got that back up to 5 days a week. Something that we're really committed to continuing with.
Absolutely brilliant. See, I said at the very beginning that EDS UK, Ehlers Danlos Support UK, do so much for the EDS community. I think it's just brilliant.
Thank you.
I love what you guys do. So yeah, I just wanted to ask, is it only people in the UK that can access or be a member?
No, not at all. So, I mean, what we say to people is, anybody can be a member, but the main reason most people join is so that they can access a support group. The support groups are, although they can be, now most of them are on Zoom, so, really anybody can join any support group, but people really value the local knowledge that the volunteer brings. So, local knowledge about services and, not just medical services, but things like Pilates and other exercise classes that can help. So, although I wouldn't say we wouldn't let anybody from outside the UK join, there almost isn't as much value if you're, if you're looking for a support group, something in the UK. If you don't live in the UK, is probably not going to be that helpful to you. But we have international subscribers to our magazine. So that's an option. People outside of the UK can get Fragile Links. And we do get the occasional call to the helpline from outside of the UK. But again, our expertise is very much within the UK, so it's very hard to advise people. So then we signpost them usually to the Ehlers Danlos Society, which is an international EDS charity.
Right, okay. That's fantastic though, because at least other people can still access you, and still be on your social media and see your posts and go on your website. So I would imagine it's still really helpful, even if you're not in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, Kay, it's just been so great speaking with you today, and you've shared so much, and I'm hoping that listeners will be able to just have a bigger understanding. I mean, some may have never heard of it at all, so it might be new for them, but just to know more of what you do. And I will be putting up your information, the website and your social media for the listeners to be able to access. But thank you for sharing all of that information.
Thank you very much. And as I said at the beginning, it's a real pleasure to be with you in your first podcast, and good luck with them. It's a great thing to be doing, and I have a lot of respect for everything you do, and good luck with it all.
Thank you so much, Kay.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
You too, bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Chronic Warriors podcast.